Palm trees and drama, what more can you ask for in a month of tennis? Hey guys, welcome back to the tennis vlog. You know the drill. Remember to subscribe if you haven't done so already. So I was sat thinking the other day, gasp, yes I was, and I realised it has been a long time since I've done a roundup video, which used to be the main content on this channel. Because there have been a lot of big tournaments recently, I have been doing more preview and predictions videos, but with two of the biggest tournaments outside of the Grand Slams, Indian Wells and the Miami Open, now over, I thought it would be a good idea to take a look back at them, at the tennis that occurred, the winners that came through, and the drama that coincided with the events. Starting with our players of the month, of course, across both tournaments there were 4 winners, but we can only have 2 players of the month. One for the ATP and one for the WTA, and we will start with the latter. WTA player of the month for me is Naomi Osaka, who won her maiden WTA title in Indian Wells. She did so in incredible fashion, coming through 7 rounds of tennis in order to raise the trophy, with a win over Daria Kasatkina, seeded 20 in the final. This really was a breakthrough tournament for the 20-year-old, who has been on the radar for some time. She beat 4 former world number ones and a notable name in each round. The mentality that has been so shaky in recent times came together for her. She finally had that firm building block underneath her. She really used that to bring out her best power tennis. She essentially blew her opponents off the court with almost Williams-like dominance. She destroyed reigning world number 1 Simona Halep in the semi-finals, and more impressive still, she continued her form into the Miami Open, beating Serena Williams, who was in the early stages of her return from pregnancy, in the first round. True, her loss to number 4 seed Alina Svitolina in the second round proved that her defensive game still needs a lot of work. However, fatigue was always going to set in. It was a brilliant month for Osaka and her team, including Sasha Bajin, who's done so well. He really has her in this great headspace, and it's looking positive for her heading onto clay. We've seen her produce great performances on the dirt before, notably against Simona Halep at the French Open, so it's going to be interesting to see whether she can bring that top quality on a regular basis. Interestingly enough, my ATP player of the month also triumphed in Indian Wells. It's Juan Martín del Potro, who defeated Roger Federer, saving 3 championship points on the return to raise the trophy. Absolutely smashing stuff from Del Potro, who spent pretty much 3 years at the sidelines not too long ago after undergoing wrist surgery. It's taken a lot of patience, a lot of hard work, and a lot of pushing through the down times, but this is Del Potro's biggest title since his return. With all the injuries currently plaguing the ATP Tour, Del Potro has been one of the more consistent players on the circuit. He's been going pretty deep at a lot of the big events, really pushing the top players. In fact, it was Del Potro that beat Federer at the US Open, and we know that the guy was not losing a lot last season. When that big serve and that big forehand are finding their mark, they can really dictate, and his backhand is still developing and getting back to where it was. But Del Potro is a smart player as well. He reads both his opponents and their games well. And with the state of the ATP at present, his draw was really pretty tough. Skip ahead to the semi-finals, and he dispatched the resurgent Milos Raonic, who can be very difficult on fast hard courts. That really showed where he was at on the return, because Raonic has one of the biggest serves in the game, and that probably prepped him well against Federer, who can throw a lot of versatility into the serve and his whole game. Now, Federer had been struggling in Indian Wells, which we'll come to a bit later. However, he had championship points, which showed that he was not playing terrible tennis. There were some great rallies. He and Del Potro have a long-standing rivalry, and there's been a bit of friction in there as well, which brought some intrigue to this clash. There was all sorts of drama, from Variety and the Points to Del Potro complaining about the pro-Federer crowd, which were a problem last year if you remember. But ultimately he pulled through and showed tremendous mental strength to do so. He had a championship point in the second set tiebreak. Federer, the top seed, brought it back, and then Del Potro saved 3 championship points on the return to come through, and no one can take this away from him. A truly great run for Del Potro, which may instill in him the mentality to go and do even further damage over the next few months, and he backed it up pretty well in Miami. It did look like he might claim the Indian Wells Miami double after sailing past the likes of Kei Nishikori and Milos Raonic again in the quarterfinals, although that was a much closer affair than the Indian Wells clash. But America's John Isner was on a roll in Miami, and that brings us on to our special mentions, because when you have two massive tournaments in 1 month, it's fair to give the other champions a say, and John Isner and Sloane Stephens both did tremendously well in Miami. Starting with US Open champion Sloane Stephens, who had really been in a big slump since that victory in New York. However, she had picked up some encouraging wins recently, including one over Victoria Azarenka in Indian Wells. Stephens had lost all her previous meetings, so it was really confidence boosting for her to beat her for the loss of 6 games. She lost to number 20 seed Kasatkina, which could have looked quite bad at the time. However, we saw Kasatkina sail through to the final, beating an impressive list of players, and her footwork and her whole ground stroke game was really on point that week. She's the star of the future, and we can now see that really that wasn't such a bad loss for Stephens. She did not let it get her down. She took the encouragement of a victory after several tournaments of not getting a victory at all, and it helped her to straight sets wins over Grand Slam champions in Garbiñe Muguruza and Angelique Kerber on the way to the Miami Open title. A really swift win over Kerber as well, who had been in decent form prior to that match. And in the final she faced Yelena Ostapenko, whose all-out aggressive game had been in form throughout the tournament. She had yet to drop a set, but Stephens did not let her win one in the final. That is 4 Grand Slam champions beaten by Stephens in Key Biscayne, and also a notable name in each round, similar to Osaka, and a variety of styles as well, showing that when she is feeling her game, that she can take on anyone. The real question for me regarding Stephens is whether we will ever see her as a consistent player, keeping her ranking up around the top 3 mark, because to do that you have to be producing your best tennis virtually each tournament that you play. And even in her breakout year, when she was doing magically well at the Grand Slams, Stephens was finding it very hard to produce anywhere near her good tennis at the outside tournaments. So that's the big question for me for Stephens moving forward, is whether she can produce this kind of standard on a more regular basis. But if she can't, then for her it's not the end of the world. It really depends which she values more, the world #1 ranking or Grand Slam titles. And if she can even produce this standard of play on a streaky basis, Stephens is likely to end her career with multiple major titles. Moving over to John Isner, the 32-year-old who produced what will probably be one of the shocks of the entire season, winning the Miami Open title. Isner had won one single ATP match this year prior to his win in America, so can't say anyone was really expecting that one. He had stiff competition in every round to claim the trophy. Perhaps his most impressive win was in the semi-finals against the very in-form Juan Martín del Potro, who has that big serve and big forehand. Number 14 seed Isner is essentially known for having a massive serve, and people have even questioned his ability to play behind the serve. However, if he proved anything in Miami, it is that he has a ground stroke game. He only dropped 7 games in beating del Potro, and then recovered from losing the first set tiebreak to beat in-form Alexander Zverev, the number 4 seed, in the final 6-7, 6-4, 6-4. Now you may remember I previewed the 4th round match between Alexander Zverev and Nick Kyrgios, 2 rising young players. Zverev played really maturely against Kyrgios in that clash. He came out ready and he stayed ready throughout the encounter, winning in straight sets. However, Isner was simply on fire in Miami, following his serves up to the net, covering it well. Yes, he's 6'11", and yes, that plays to his advantage, but he's not winning all the time, so it really shows great concentration and belief from Isner to hang on and come through and win the biggest title of his career so late on in his career. Now, I know a lot of people weren't too thrilled about Isner winning this title, more on that later as well, and admittedly he does not have the most interesting game to watch. The whole thing can seem a bit robotic, but boring tennis does not equate with bad tennis. So there are your ATP and WTA champions of the month, and now we move on to our shock of the month, which for me is Roger Federer's 2nd round Miami Open loss to qualifier Thanasi Kokkinakis. Before we get into breaking this down, I want to say that I don't really consider Federer's loss to del Potro a massive shock. Perhaps a massive shock once you consider that he had match points, championship points on serve, but prior to the match we'd seen that he wasn't in the great form that saw him win the Australian Open in January. However, his Miami Open loss was a lot more shocking, because here we knew that that Federer was likely going to skip the entire clay court season to preserve his body from injury. He needed a deep run to keep his confidence at a good level before he took a break. He suddenly had a lot more to prove, and when he's needed to prove himself over the past year and a bit, he has come out really strong. This time, not so much. I personally hadn't overlooked Kokkinakis. The moment he was put into Federer's section of the draw, I said that it suddenly made it look interesting. The thing about this clash is that it was branded as a massive upset, which by ranking it was, because Kokkinakis is outside the top 100. However, he was one of the brightest rising stars on tour a few years ago, but injury has completely dogged his path. So in my book, Kokkinakis should be ranked a lot higher than he is now. You may remember my opening to the Indian Wells Miami roundup last season.
Wonder who won the Miami Open?
Skip ahead to this year and not much had changed. Federer and Nadal were still winning the biggest titles, Djokovic and Murray are still struggling with injury and form, but it must be said, while Kokkinakis played a great match and showed great resolve and confidence throughout, Federer was not playing his best tennis. He was looking pretty loose and tired. Yet he still made it go to a final set tiebreak. Final set tiebreak's not Federer's best friend right now. This does leave a lot of question marks surrounding Federer as he goes on to skip the clay court season, which I will quickly add I think is a good idea from him. It tremendously helped him last year. He went all the way to the trophy at Wimbledon with little fuss. At this stage of his career, after all he has achieved, Federer has no obligation to play on clay. Honestly, with Nadal injured and the tour so unpredictable right now, I think that Federer would have had a shot at the French Open and the Masters 1000 events leading up to it, but this decision shows that he's thinking long term and that he's being sensible, and I think it's totally the right decision from my perspective for him to skip the clay. But I have digressed a little bit. Well, it's maybe a little bit concerning that Federer is now on a two-match losing streak and has a lot more pressure on his shoulders heading into the grass court season. I think it's perfectly natural what happened in Indian Wells and Miami. With the tour depleted and with his own great form, Federer has been dominating in an incredible fashion, and no one can sustain that forever, as we are seeing with Novak Djokovic right now. Already this season he's won a Grand Slam title, got back to world #1, so it's only natural that fatigue is going to set in at some point, which is happening now, and even through that he managed to edge out a match against an opponent who is a likely star of the future, Coric, and was playing great tennis in Indian Wells. Already this year he has shown that he can win dominating and he can win struggling as well, and altogether I think it just goes to show that Federer has been simply superior for much of the last year and a bit. That said, this does make the rest of the season look a lot more interesting. Let's have a look at a little bit of controversy and drama. Interestingly and unusually, a lot of the drama has been happening on the men's tour over the past month. I'm going to have a couple of controversies of the month in this video because there was one thing I wanted to comment on a little bit and another thing that got requested, so I didn't particularly want to talk about this, but here we go. During the close-fought match between Thanasi Kokkinakis and hot and cold Spaniard Fernando Verdasco, Verdasco was not pleased with a member of the crowd apparently talking continuously between his first and second serve, so he told the umpire about this, and there was a lot of discussion and flat-out complaining and heated debate. It was basically an argument and the language wasn't great. I'm sure a lot of you have seen the videos, but it turned out that Kokkinakis thought Verdasco was complaining about his dad. It was very OTT. I mean, I think I just spent about half a minute explaining that. It didn't need it. But despite this being an argument between Kokkinakis and Verdasco, into the debate stepped Nick Kyrgios. In short, Kyrgios tweeted that he hoped Kokkinakis won the encounter because Verdasco was the saltiest dude, and we all know what often happens when Kyrgios tweets something controversial.
Nick Kyrgios just tweeted, that means I've got like 30 seconds to screenshot before he deletes it.
In response to the absent tweet, Verdasco replied, correcting grammar here, when you have the courage to post a tweet insulting another player, you need to have the same courage to not delete it. Kyrgios then comes out with another tweet stating, I would honestly have told it to Fernando's face. The reason I deleted my previous tweet was because I didn't want to cause cause unwanted attention. As I pointed out at the time, if Kyrgios wanted to say it to the guy's face, why did he tweet when he was still on court? I didn't really want to comment on this because I've said my piece. Kyrgios gets a lot of stick from the media. I do feel like he does get some unfair treatment because he has a reputation from times past when he was more out of control, and therefore as he tries to improve, that reputation is still clinging to him and meaning that people are more interested in him in that kind of respect than they otherwise would be. It would be one thing if this was happening for the first or second time, but this is not the first time that Kyrgios has been embroiled in controversy that he has put himself into, essentially. Kyrgios has so much to deal with in the media anyway. He needs to stop putting his foot in it like this, and it's beyond me really why he doesn't have people around him, or maybe he does, who are saying to him, look, control what you're putting online, think about it before you actually make a move, because it's so quick to do. Honestly, that's about all I'm saying on this, and hilariously enough, it turned out that it wasn't actually Kokonakis' dad who was making the distractions anyway. So much drama. This is what happens when everything descends into carnage. And now moving on to our second controversy, and I say controversy of the month, but this is something that has been going on for years and has happened not just with John Isner, who I'm using as kind of the peg for using this, but also with other players as well. And this is hate in tennis, and there is a lot of hate in tennis coming from the fans, and I feel that it's just completely uncalled for. I don't want to go into a ton of detail on this for time's sake, and these are opinions that I've had for a while. There are a lot of players who are hated on for reasons that have nothing to do with a tennis court, and this gives you a bit of an idea.
Oh my gosh, I hate John Isner.
Oh. Didn't know you knew him.
I feel like I do.
Not really sure what you mean by that.
I scroll through his likes on Twitter like 3 times a day, and oh my gosh, I hate John Isner.
Okay. So that demonstrates my point, but getting serious now. I think there is definitely a difference between hating someone's opinions and views and then hating that person themselves, especially if you don't know this person and this person hasn't so much as murdered a puppy. I'm not going into whose opinion is right and whose opinion is wrong, but I personally believe that hatred of people is wrong anyway. Every person is capable of good and bad. Who am I to hate on someone else? If people have the energy to actively hate on people that they don't even know, and if they have the time to go looking for reasons to hate on people they don't know, I'm sure we can find more productive things to do with our time than actively hate on people that we don't even know. But despite the skit, that actually got pretty deep, so leaving that one there. And finally, I don't know what to call this segment of the video except for Novak Djokovic splitting with his entire coaching team again, less than a year after he did so previously. Last year it was a long-time coaching team that Djokovic split with, but this is equally as shocking. It was a bit of a statement when Djokovic enlisted the help of 8-time Grand Slam champion Andre Agassi to join his team, not a regular on the coaching circuit, and then when he added the recently retired Radek Stepanek to his team at the beginning of the year, it was a sign of purpose that he was on the road back. Agassi was the first to split from Djokovic a few days ago, and the reasons given by the man himself were agreeing to disagree too much, which was a pretty open reason from Agassi, ha ha ha. That is a little bit concerning given that Djokovic has hardly been on tour since Agassi joined him, with his elbow injury continuing to plague him, so what was there to agree to disagree on? Perhaps it was timings of Djokovic's comeback to tour, because several times he has tried to start playing again, won 1 or 2 matches but then felt pain in the elbow again. I've said before, I feel like Djokovic's enthusiasm and desire to get back playing and in the game is running ahead of him and maybe making him jump ahead too early. It's all speculation, but like I say, there is not much for them to have agreed to disagree on, but it could well be technical issues in practice and that kind of thing. Looking at the statement from Djokovic, it sounds like the split from Stepanek was pretty amicable, the one with Agassi not as much. To encourage Djokovic fans, it definitely looks like he is going to great lengths to ensure that he can come back onto tour and play as well as he is able. I will continue to say not to worry too soon, and I will probably say that until the guy is on a 10-match losing streak or something, because as we have seen with Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal Nadal, it is always too early to write off a champion. We have covered a lot, so I think we will hold that there. The clay court season is here, even though hard courts will intermingle with the dirt for a week or so yet. I will have preview content going up on my website, The Tennis Journal, so check the link in the description. I also have monthly interviews going up there, so keep an eye out for them. Leave a comment and let me know your opinions on anything that I have been talking about. I've shared my opinions and I am very open to yours. I have been doing more preview and predictions videos lately because my stats tell me that's what you quite like, so I will be bringing them back next time we have WTA Premier and ATP Masters 1000 events. If you liked this video, you can show me by pressing that button, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't done so. We are trying to hit 1000, so tell people that might be interested. Follow me on social media so that you know when to expect the next video. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.